Exposing Ritvik Vada scam Part 3. In previous videos, we have dealt with issues related to the so-called Ritvik system. However, Ritvik theorists continue to bombard their followers with many different articles that attempt to justify the establishment of the Ritvik system by Srila Prabhupada for operation after his physical departure. Frankly, there is no desire to refute all of these articles, since in essence it is all waste paper, because they are based on false premises. The whole theory of the Ritvik system is based on Prabhupada's written directive of July 9th. There is no word Ritvik in this directive itself. Also in this directive there is a condition that cannot be fulfilled after the departure of Prabhupada. Namely, in the letter there is a requirement to send the names of new devotees to Prabhupada in order to include these names in the book Initiated Disciples of Srila Prabhupada. All attempts to somehow explain how you can send the names of devotees to Prabhupada without the presence of Prabhupada look funny. For example, Krishnakant in his book The Final Order explains this as follows. Nowhere in the final order does it state that if the Initiated Disciples book becomes physically separated from Srila Prabhupada, all initiations must be suspended. Logic error named arguments based on lack of evidence to the contrary. It is a classic example of sophistic. Nowhere in the final order does it state, if the earth is torn apart by a nuclear strike, all initiations must be suspended. We are not talking what July 9th letter doesn't state, we are talking what it states. And the letter states the names to be sent to Prabhupada. Krishnakant states in his The Final Order, whether or not names can be sent to Srila Prabhupada has no bearing on the system for initiation, since at the point where new names are ready to be sent, the initiation has already occurred. It is again Krishnakant's inventions. The condition to send the names to Prabhupada means he was a participant of this system. The letter says to send the names to Prabhupada, not to anybody else. Why should we violate this condition? Another statement by Krishnakant. It was generally understood that Srila Prabhupada was ready to leave at any time, thus the danger of not having anywhere to send the names was present, from day one of the order being issued. In other words, taking the possible scenario that Srila Prabhupada leaves the planet the day after a disciple has been initiated through the Ritvik system, according to the above proposition the disciple would not actually have been initiated simply because of the speed by which mail is delivered. Certainly there would be nothing preventing the names of new initiates being entered into His Divine Grace as Initiated Disciples book even now. This book could then be offered to Srila Prabhupada at a fitting time. As for the ridiculous idea that the initiation took place, and Prabhupada left the planet, while the letter was going, it generally raises a smile. In that case, the names would have been entered into the book by the secretary himself, who was authorized by Prabhupada to do so. This would be the completion of the act of initiating a devotee, whom in fact Prabhupada had already initiated, while he was present in this world. Cause secretary took this service from Prabhupada to enter the names in the book. That is to say, this service is received from the Guru. For example, Tamil Krishna Goswami got this service, and he entered these names on the instructions of Prabhupada. And the argument, there would be nothing preventing the names of new initiates being entered into the book even now, is arbitrariness. Because Prabhupada did not authorize anyone else to do it. That is, it won't be authoritative. Service must be received from the Guru. Prabhupada authorized his secretary to enter the names, neither you, nor anybody else is authorized to do this. This argument is from the same series of stupid attempts to justify the validity of the Ritvik system after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, when the proponents of the Ritvik theory, when we asked ISKM Society, who authorized Sundar Gopal Prabhu, to act as a Ritvik for initiations on behalf of Prabhupada, they referred to confession of Tamil Krishna Goswami, who said, more can be added if necessary. What was considered in the second series of the video? That is, their argument was, more can be added if necessary. But they did not particularly bother about who should add new representatives of the Acharya. Added and all, they say, but by who, they don't understand. But it turns out they can be added not by anyone, but only by the GBC committee. Therefore, their next interpretation is, the names of new devotees can also be entered into the book by anyone. Following their logic, I can apply to Microsoft company demanding to add me to the board of directors and at the same time to the shareholders of this company. There, after all, there is also a procedure for appointing new members, that is, as the supporters of the Ritvik theories say, more can be added if necessary. Following their logic, not only Ritviks but Prabhupada's secretaries can also be added to enter the names in the book of initiated disciples of Prabhupada. Why wouldn't the Microsoft campaign add me, or any man in the street, to the leadership of this organization, or wouldn't add me, as the personal secretary of the chairman of the board of directors, so that I can make any entries in the minutes of the meetings? These arguments are designed for naive simpletons, far from the principles of jurisprudence and document management, which for the most part are the followers of this idea. It was not possible to become Prabhupada's personal secretary on a whim without his order. That is why we say that the July 9th letter as interpreted by the Ritvik system to supposedly act for years after the departure of Prabhupada is an absurdity and a fantasy of some narrow-minded individuals. If Prabhupada wanted this system to work after his physical departure, he would have considered this system more carefully. And in this directive, or in other additional instructions, the procedures for entering the names of new devotees in the book of Prabhupada's initiated disciples would be described. But the letter says to send these names to Prabhupada. If this letter is an order for years as the supporters of the Ritvik theory claim, and it must be strictly followed, then how to fulfill this requirement of the order? There is only one explanation for this. The July 9th letter was not designed to last for 10,000 years. It was a directive to appoint representatives of the Acharya acting on his behalf to conduct the initiation ceremony in the presence of Prabhupada. When the Acharya has passed away from this world, there is no longer any need for these representatives, just as there is no need to send these names to the Acharya. Everything is clear and crisp. Why fantasize? Therefore, the answer to the question, to whom the names will be sent after initiation, will be like this. No one. The question is closed. What I want to convey in my message in this video. The proponents of the Ritvik theory used this letter as the main evidence for their whole theory of the Ritvik system after the departure of Prabhupada. As we have shown, this letter is not any basis for the operation of such a system after Prabhupada's departure. Therefore, all subsequent so-called evidence presented by the proponents of the Ritvik system is simply a sham. Because their system of evidence is built on a false foundation. Namely, on a letter dated July 9th, which was misinterpreted. Having refuted the fact of the establishment of the Ritvik system for the alleged action after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, the whole shaky structure of the evidence of the Ritvik supporters collapses. Therefore, there is no point in further study of any articles by Ritvik supporters. No Ritvik system has been proven to be in place after the physical departure of Prabhupada. But the question remains up in the air as to who should conduct the initiation ceremonies after the departure of Prabhupada. How is succession transmitted in the parampara? Srila Prabhupada himself said that his guru had not appointed any successors. He ordered the GBC to be organized, to cooperate in the mission, and to await a self-manifested Acharya. It is said BG 4:34 to turn to a spiritual master, to one who has seen the truth. Truth is Krishna, therefore one who sees Krishna is a pure devotee of Krishna. So a guru is a pure devotee of Krishna. And as stated in CC 81.58, he must be accessible to the external senses. Previously there were no organizations like the Gaudiya Math or ISKCON in the Vedic system. Therefore, there was not much discussion about the succession of gurus. The most successful preachers who were recognized by other authoritative Vaishnava sadhus were acharyas. The acharya had disciples for whom this acharya was self-manifested. However, it is not enough for an acharya to simply be manifested to his disciples. It is necessary to be recognized by other reputable Vaishnava sadhus in the same parampara, as well as to have the appropriate adhikara or qualification. And such acharyas had disciples, some had many, some had few. And the most successful qualified preachers from these disciples became the next acharyas. After the departure of Bhaktisiddhanta, he did not appoint anyone as the next acharya. He ordered his disciples to form the GBC and await for the self-manifested acharya. The principle is that the acharya is self-effulgent. Then the question arises, who should be considered an acharya after the departure of Srila Prabhupada? What did the Srila Prabhupada say about it? Srila Prabhupada himself has repeatedly said that his disciples should become gurus. Also, Prabhupada said that the guru must be qualified. Proponents of the Ritvik theory say that the guru must give his disciple the order to become a guru. And they quote, one should take initiation from a bona fide spiritual master coming in the disciplic succession, who is authorized by his predecessor spiritual master. This is called Diksha-vidhana. SB 4, 8.54. Supporters of the Ritvik theory interpret the phrase authorized by a previous spiritual master, that this is an order that a disciple must receive from his guru in order to start acting like a guru. However, the quotation says it is called Diksha-vidhana. In Srimad Bhagavatam 3.33.6, the procedure of Diksha-vidhana is described in detail. Generally, only a person who is born in a family of Brahmanas, who has been reformed by the 10 kinds of purificatory processes and who is learned in Vedic literature is allowed to perform the Vedic sacrifices. And Sridhara Swami also remarks that one can immediately become eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. A person born in a family of the low caste which is accustomed to eat dogs is so positioned due to his past sinful activities, but by chanting or hearing once in pureness, or in an offenseless manner, he is immediately relieved of the sinful reaction. Not only is he relieved of the sinful reaction, but he immediately achieves the result of all purificatory processes. Usually, initiation depends on the bona fide spiritual master who directs the disciple. If he sees that a disciple has become competent and purified by the process of chanting, he offers the sacred thread to the disciple just so that he will be recognized as 100% equal with a Brahmana. This is also confirmed in the Hari Bhakti Vilasa by Sri Sanatana Goswami, as a base metal like bell metal can be changed into gold by a chemical process, any person can similarly be changed into a Brahmana by Diksha-vidhana, the initiation process. That is, the quotation from SB 4854 does not say that one must receive in order to become a guru, but that one must receive initiation from a spiritual master, who himself received initiation from his spiritual master in an authoritative way, that is, from a worthy Brahmana. This thesis is supported by another quote, 81.35 purport. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact, he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress toward spiritual realization, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Regarding the fact that the disciple should be ordered to act as a guru from his spiritual master, the disciple receives such an order when he understands the message transmitted through the parampara from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Amara Agyaya Guru Hana. What Prabhupada talks about on May 28. Let's return to the conversation of May 28. Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Amara Agyaya Guru Hana. One can understand the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he can become guru. Or one who understands his guru's order, the same parampara, he can become guru. And therefore I shall select some of you. Prabhupada, quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Amara Agyaya Guru Hana, says that one who understands the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or his guru, the same parampara, can become a guru. Then he says, I will select some of you. But Prabhupada did not appoint any gurus in his presence, just as he did not appoint Ritvik acharyas. And later, in a letter dated July 9th, the word Ritiks was already used, which in the letter itself was defined as representatives of the acharya. Supporters of the Ritvik theory argue that the words Ritvik and Ritik are synonyms. This may be so, but we are proceeding from the meanings of the words that Prabhupada himself put into these words. In a conversation dated May 28, the word Ritvik was used in the sense of officiating acharya. And in the July 9th letter, the word Ritik meant representative of the acharya. In official legal documents, no ambiguous interpretations are allowed. Therefore, in the letter, there is a definition of the word Ritvik as a representative of the Acharya. And this already changes the meaning of the letter of July 9th.
If a Ritvik is an officiating Acharya who acts as an Acharya on behalf of the founder Acharya, Prabhupada.
That is, it is understood that such officiating Acharyas can act even after the departure of the founder Acharya, since they are Acharyas themselves.
In the official document, the word Ritvik, defined by Prabhupada as representative of the Acharya, no longer gives the possibility to act as any kind of Acharyas.
Because if the Acharya has gone, then there is no need for the representatives of the Acharya. Going back to the May 28 conversation in which Prabhupada did not appoint any gurus in his presence. Because in my presence one should not become guru, so on my behalf, on my order. Amara Agyaya Guru Hana. Be actually guru, but by my order.
However, if Prabhupada did not appoint a guru in his presence, this does not exclude the possibility of someone in the future acting as a guru, if he understood the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Amara Agyaya Guru Hana, or his guru of the same parampara after the departure of his guru.
The conversation goes on to talk about translations of books that Prabhupada would never see.
And if you carefully read this conversation, then Prabhupada's idea becomes obvious that a realized soul can be after his departure.
Satsvarupa asks, for example, we've heard suggested that the Padma Purana or the Sat Sandarbha may be translated. But what would the system be to ensure the parampara if you would not personally see these translations? Prabhupada, that you have to examine expertly. If somebody has translated properly, it can be published. Prabhupada goes on to explain what quality translation is. Prabhupada says that a realized soul must be, otherwise you will translate a BCD, that is, mechanically. He says to the disciples, I don't think there are many who can translate properly. What to translate? Translate Vedic literature. However, he does not exclude this when he says if somebody has translated properly, it can be published. It is important to note that concepts such as
realized soul, self-realized soul, spiritual master, Acharya, Mahabhagavata, pure devotee, sadhu, guru, are all the synonyms used in Vaishnava literature to avoid repetition and monotony in the text. Let's establish the identity of the terms realized soul, self-realized soul, spiritual master, Acharya.
So we quote as before 2864. One has to learn Bhagavad Gita from a realized soul. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. From this quote, we can see the terms like realized soul, self-realized soul, and spiritual master mean the same. From the glossary to Bhagavad Gita, we see the definition of word Acharya. One who teaches by his own example, a spiritual master. So a realized soul equals Acharya. So these terms are the same. What does Acharya mean? An Acharya is one who teaches by example. Any pure devotee teaches by example. So any pure devotee is Acharya.
In other words, in the May 28 conversation, Prabhupada says that it is up to a realized soul to translate the books, which will not mechanically translate a BCD, and a proper translation that can be published is a translation made by a realized soul.
That is, by an Acharya. Also this point is clarified by Prabhupada's interview. 4 June 1976 Los Angeles interview. Reporter, is there anyone who is designated to succeed you as the primary teacher of the movement?
Prabhupada, I am training some, I mean to say, advanced students so that they may be very easily take up the charge.
I have made them GBC, they are under my direct training, and I think they will be able to conduct this movement. Reporter, do you expect to name one person as your successor or have you already? Prabhupada, that I am not contemplating now. But there is no need of one person. As other things are managed but by committee, so this can also be managed and the committee may elect one person as chief.
As, just like in the democracy there are senators and there is president, so it may be, I may nominate, or they can nominate.
What is Prabhupada talking about here? That there will be a GBC committee and if necessary, they can elect the chief. Chief, who? Since the reporter's question was about the primary teacher of the movement, the successor of Prabhupada, GBC can nominate the primary teacher who is the successor accordingly. That is the same concept established by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. GBC committee and self-effulgent acharya. But one thing is Guru Parampara and another thing is organization.
Prior to Gaudiya Math and ISKCON, knowledge was passed from a teacher to a student, and there was no question of who was qualified or not to be a Diksha guru.
This happened naturally among the Vaishnavas. Qualified Vaishnavas appeared who were well versed in Siddhanta, who could, through explanations and disputes, refute false Siddhanta and establish Tattva. And such preachers had their followers who became their disciples. When it comes to organizations, the situation is different. There is already an organizational structure within which the followers of the founders Acharya need to operate.
Therefore, the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati ordered his disciples to set up a governing body to cooperate in the mission and await a self-manifested Acharya.
He did not appoint anyone to be an Acharya. Prabhupada acted in the same way. He set up a GBC committee. His idea was that they should run the mission, become qualified devotees. One who attains the necessary qualification of realization and understands the order of Mahaprabhu, or his guru of the same parampara, becomes a guru. Another thing is that in the GBC committee itself at the time of the departure of Prabhupada, such a realized soul was absent. So Prabhupada said that I don't think there are many who can translate properly.
But he also did not rule out the possibility of the appearance of a realized personality when he said that a proper translation could be published.
However, immediately after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, the GBC made a mistake. These 11 representatives of the Acharyas declared themselves to be Prabhupada's successor Acharyas. And further, after the Guru reform in the mid-80s, the GBC allowed many other individuals to initiate disciples within the movement. So we have what we have. There had become many gurus. It was necessary to make a choice already. The GBC is the governing body authorized by Prabhupada.
He checks each candidate for at least the minimum qualifications, so that a candidate for the role of an initiating guru within ISKCON meets the standards of devotional service and Prabhupada's teachings. And which of the gurus to accept as his spiritual master the candidate disciple should decide. And as it says in the Nectar of Instructions verse 5, one should accept an Uttama guru. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura has given some practical hints to the effect that an Uttama Adhikari Vaishnava can be recognized by his ability to convert many fallen souls to Vaishnavism.
One should not become a spiritual master unless he has attained the platform of Uttama Adhikari.
A neophyte Vaishnava or a Vaishnava situated on the intermediate platform can also accept disciples, but such disciples must be on the same platform, and it should be understood that they cannot advance very well toward the ultimate goal of life under his insufficient guidance.
Therefore, a disciple should be careful to accept an Uttama Adhikari as a spiritual master. The same principle is reflected in GBC Resolution 409.
As a matter of utmost ecclesiastical responsibility, ISKCON's ultimate managing authority, the GBC, regulates who within ISKCON may perform the service of initiating disciples. When the GBC allows a devotee to take up the service of initiating, it does not thereby endorse him as an Uttama Adhikari, or pure devotee, or certify his having achieved any specific state of realization.
Rather, the GBC indicates that it has no objection to his initiating disciples within ISKCON. Within this context, the choice of whom to select as one's spiritual master is ultimately the prospective disciple's own responsibility. The same point is described in Prabhupada's books. Before accepting a guru, one should be assured of the spiritual master's position. CC Madha 24 330. CC 80 159.
To learn the transcendental science, it is imperative that one avoid the company of undesirable persons, and always seek the company of saints and sages, who are able to impart lessons of transcendental knowledge.
The potent words of such realized souls penetrate the heart, thereby eradicating all misgivings accumulated through years of undesirable association. Just because the GBC has authorized someone to act as a Diksha guru, it does not mean at all that he has the level of Uttama.
The GBC simply indicates it has no objection to this one to act as a guru, that is, checks that the person has some pre-qualification.
Because there are many active initiating gurus in ISKCON, it would be unethical to single out any of them.
In accordance with Vaishnava etiquette, it is not customary to publicly call anyone an Uttama in Vaishnava society.
Yes, and such a devotee himself will not want to be singled out like that against the background of the rest. However, the responsibility for choosing a spiritual master lays with the disciple himself. It is to him that Prabhupada advises to choose an Uttama devotee.
We return to CC 8158, where it is said that the external manifestation of the Paramatma, the spiritual master, must be accessible to the external senses of the conditioned soul. The Ritvik theorists have tried to interpret this verse in such a way that the images and murtis of Srila Prabhupada are the form of the Guru that appears to our outer senses.
Yes, murti appears for a conditioned being so that he can see the image of the Srila Prabhupada. But murti is not an instructing spiritual master. A conditioned being cannot question the murti and receive instructions from him. Murti does not appear for us at the level of speech. It is said that the Paramatma appears before the external senses of the fortunate conditioned soul, CC 8158. The outer senses are the 5 knowing senses and the 5 acting senses. Among them is speech. And there is one inner sense, a mind. That is, it should be possible to question the Guru at the level of speech. The argument that Ritvik theorists make to inquire Prabhupada through the books refers to the inner sense of the mind, not the outer senses. Yes, we agree that the answers to all questions are contained in Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada's books are instructions for all mankind. And the transcendental knowledge of Bhakti Yoga is the confidential science. And so, Prabhupada says in his books, you have to accept a guru, everything is clearly written there.
For example, you read the instructions for some complex device, let's say a video camera or a computer, and it says if this happens, then do this, and if this happens, then do this.
In this case, contact an authorized specialist. Similarly, Prabhupada says that if you want to make progress in Krishna consciousness, go to a specialist, that is, a manifested guru. And this is the answer to the question of those who think that through books, they can achieve the ultimate goal of devotional service. So the answer is, read books, learn the science of devotional service, accept a guru, and inquire, according to Book 434. Going to a specialist and inquiring is also Srila Prabhupada's complete answer in his books. And who is the specialist? The specialist is the manifested guru, the devotee, the living Bhagavata. Antya 753 Purport. If one wants to learn the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam, one must take lessons from a realized soul. One should not proudly think that one can understand the transcendental loving service of the Lord simply by reading books. One must become a servant of a Vaishnava. As Narottama Das Thakura has confirmed, Chadiya Vaishnava Sivanastar Kaichikiba. One cannot be in a transcendental position unless one very faithfully serves a pure Vaishnava. One must accept a Vaishnava guru, and then, by questions and answers, one should gradually learn what pure devotional service to Krishna is. That is called the parampara system. IC 10.1.4.
Krishna consciousness is so exalted that one who is perfectly situated in Krishna consciousness, under the direction of the spiritual master, is fully satisfied by reading Krishna Katha, as found in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar Vedic literatures.
Since merely talking about Krishna is so pleasing, we can simply imagine how pleasing it is to render service to Krishna. When discourses on Krishna Katha take place between a liberated spiritual master and his disciple, others also sometimes take advantage of hearing these topics and also benefit. These topics are the medicine to stop the repetition of birth and death. About what gets the attention in the quotes, there are questions and answers. Another quote is a discussion of Krishnakant between a liberated spiritual master and his disciple. That is, there should be a two-way discussion and not a monologue.
If one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant propensity for serving the Supreme.
CC 8158.
Ritvik supporters may argue that Prabhupada is manifested to the external senses in his audio and video recordings, which we can hear and see with the material senses. The principle of sadhu sangha, communication with a sadhu, in a question-answer format, implies two-way communication with the guru, and not one way, when I can hear the audio recording, but I cannot ask a question.
Supporters of the Ritvik theory argue that when a guru in ISKCON gives lectures over the internet and answers the questions from disciples, his voice is digitized and it is no longer a live voice. How is such a voice different from recording Prabhupada's voice on tape or digital media? It differs radically. When a manifested guru gives a lecture over the internet, it happens at the same moment in time. It is possible to ask a clarifying question or even a series of questions. That is, there is the possibility of two-way communication. And this is not a record but the direct participation of the guru in the discussion.
When we listen to the recording, the connection is already one-sided, we cannot ask questions, and since the science of devotional service is very deep knowledge in which there are many nuances, there is great freedom for our own inventions.
And the record is already a separated energy. The guru does not take part in the discussion at the moment. A record is the same thing as a book. Only a book is a record in the form of text. DG745 Bombay, March 30, 71. These 8 kinds of material elements, they are separated energy from me. Separated energy you can understand very easily. Just like I am speaking and it is being recorded in the tape recorder. When the tape recorder is replayed again, you will find that I am speaking again. But that speaking and my present speaking is different. Therefore that speaking is separated energy. Now I am speaking directly. That is not separated. But when it is transferred to another matter, that is separated energy. The guru must be accessible at the level of speech. And the essential point is not even that you need to hear the guru from mouth to ear. Although in most cases this is exactly what happens. And mutual communication guru-disciple. In question and answer format.
After all, it does not matter at all what medium separates the spiritual master and the disciple. Impulses running through the wires, radio waves, letters to the spiritual master. All this is a material medium, through which communication with the spiritual master takes place at the level of external senses. The very possibility of getting a clear, unambiguous answer to your question is the principle of inquiring and communication of sadhu sangha, the second stage in the development of devotional service, Matter 23:14.
It does not matter at all where the guru is. In the same room with a disciple or across the ocean. As the Ritviks say, the physical presence of the guru is not important. The very possibility of obtaining a clear answer to any philosophical question is important. This communication means that the Paramatma appears before the external senses of the disciple. Antya 7.53 Purport. If one wants to learn the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam, one must take lessons from a realized soul. One should not proudly think that one can understand the transcendental loving service of the Lord simply by reading books. One must become a servant of a Vaishnava. As Narottama Das Thakura has confirmed, Chadiya Vaishnava Siva, Nistar Kiba, one cannot be in a transcendental position unless one very faithfully serves a pure Vaishnava. One must accept a Vaishnava guru, and then, by questions and answers,
one should gradually learn what pure devotional service to Krishna is.
That is called the parampara system. One cannot be freed from Maya's clutches without sadhu sangha cc. Matha 2283, the benediction of a great devotee.
Srimad Bhagavatam 7.532. An important point is such a thing as sadhu sangha.
It is defined in Prabhupada's books as association with pure devotees. The term itself speaks for itself. Sadhu Sangha is association with a sadhu, with a perfect devotee, that is, with a bona fide guru. The root cause of devotional service to Lord Krishna is association with advanced devotees. Even when one's dormant love for Krishna awakens, association with devotees is still most essential. Matha 2283. One desiring perfection or liberation should associate with a person who is already liberated. This is called sadhu sangha, cc Matha 2283, associating with a perfect devotee. SB 431-2. In this series, we continued to explore the topic of the Guru manifested to the external senses. The form of Guru, Ashraya Vigraha, which was discussed in the previous series, should be manifested not only for such external senses as vision or hearing, but also at the level of speech. That is, there should be a full-fledged two-way opportunity to communicate with the Guru, Sadhu Sangha. In the next series, we will continue the theme of the manifested Guru and his required qualification. We will also continue to analyze the topic of Sadhu Sangha.
In what cases is a Madhyama level Guru enough, in which this level is not enough, so we'll get this point under close consideration.
Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned. See you in the following video. Jai Shri Guru and Gauranga. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy.